assign that to be our Flask app. And this is what we had before, right? Was this app.config from mapping. And so, for example, right, like I said, all this is, you can store whatever you want here. So we could do like foo. It doesn't have to even all be capitalized, I don't think. And this is bar. And this is what? This is now. Okay? And now and let's just do this. Now we can print out. Let's put a breakpoint here. We could even, we can put a breakpoint. We could even run this interactively, I believe. It just might be a little different because we call this file init. I'm just going to call it main.py for now. All right, so we'll run this. So we'll do Python 3 source/main.py, and let's run it interactively. You can see we stored app.config from mapping, and if you do app.config, right, this is like this config object, and so you can see that it's set certain default values already for us, right? But we can change these, and I'm guessing if we do app.config/foo, I'm just kidding. Apparently that doesn't work. It didn't seem to set it, did it? Maybe I do need to make this capitalize. Let's just do the normal stuff. Equals CRM and user equals Postgres. Alright, app.config. Okay, so here you can see it. Database is CRM, user is Postgres. If I do database, there it is. All right, so we're just storing this. I don't know why it didn't work previously. If I make this lowercase, maybe it breaks. Let's just find out. Yeah, look at that. So it only stores it, apparently, if it's cap. So you can see user works fine, right? But when I tried to store something lowercase, that didn't work fine. And we can maybe confirm that. You see this? I'm doing keys, and you can see these are all caps. So I guess we do have to just, if I change this to foo, I think it will still work. There's foo. Right? So we could do app.config foo. So apparently this works just like a dictionary. It sets some default values for you that it's using, but that you can change, and the keys have to be capitalized. We just learned that. Okay, so the way that you can kind of do this is, say now you have, we'll call this like our database, and like previously we would do something like import scicop g2. We don't have a database hooked up, so this won't work, but we'll do this. We'll do app.route/users, right? And say when you call the users, then we want to run this method. And so this will do, right, as select all from users. This will be our query. And then we'll do create our connection. So that'll be scicop g2.connect to the CRM. Okay, now this is kind of where it will change. Is like, instead of directly calling this from the CRM, let me just reference it. You can see that, so if we originally do this, where we connect to the name of the database and also specify like the user. Sorry about that. We'll also specify like the user. So it's database equals the CRM, and maybe user equals Postgres, right? So that's one, we can just directly hard code this in there. Another way is we can pull the data off of the configuration object, all right? So we can just do, instead we can replace this with app.config database, right? And that will return to us the CRM. And then user, we could do app.config user. That's all it is. Okay? So we can set it here and then retrieve it in our routes. Okay? And then now, like, kind of other things that are there are we can wrap the whole thing in the create app function. And then finally pass these items through as arguments. Okay, so for instance, this will be like the database name, and this will be the username. And now we'll pass this through here. Right? What are the benefits of passing this through as arguments? It means that, remember, like for testing, we use a test database. For development, we'll use a development database. So now we can easily just call it create app, pass through, say, like CRM development, and user is Postgres, and store this equal to our app, and then this is a function, so just throw return app. Okay? So we call this function. This function will pass through CRM development and Postgres. Okay? So then that will pass through this name, right? This name here, we'll set that on the config object. I need a colon here. And then finally we'll retrieve it down here. Okay? And generally this is in like 2 different files. We'll put this in a run file just for now. So we can say something like, from main import create app. Okay, from source.main, I guess, import create app. And now when we call this, right, this is calling this function, which is then setting the config object, defining the routes, returning the application, right? Returning this Flask. We should really put this inside the function too. Returning this Flask application object. And then we can do this, and then app.run debug equals true. So this is the one new thing, right? We can try running it, I think. It won't, like I said, we don't have an actual database, Python 3 run.py, but it is booting up. It will just break if you actually go to /users. This will break here. And we would do something like here's my connection, and connection.cursor, create the cursor, and then cursor dot execute query, and then return cursor dot fetch all. If we just want to return some data and JSONify it. Right, the other option is to use that JSON, import JSON, and then JSON.dumps down here. Okay. So this is kind of one thing. Notice that we are like passing the name and the database directly here. Right, we kind of know from also the last class that we could use the .env, right? And basically what we'll do is ultimately we'll have a settings.py. So I have .env, right? Let's say the database is here. We'll call that CRM development. And then we'll call the user equal to Postgres. And then in a settings.py file, we will say import dot, I forget if it's called from, is it just .env? Import load.env, something like that. I may have to cheat. By the way, in GitHub, if you just press the letter T, if you go to GitHub, any like GitHub repository, just press the letter T. It will allow you to then search. So like I can search for a file, like settings.py. So it's this, from.env, import load.env. I think I was right. And now we can just call this. This is fine. Okay, so now, and import OS. And now finally that we have these variables, right, are coming from here. So this is really, this database is CRM development, right, because it's reading from the environmental file. This is CRM development, the database is CRM development. So it reads database, it gets it from here. And when it reads user, it gets it from here, okay, as Postgres. And then finally in the run.py, we can say from settings, import from database and user, right? And then we can pass these two things as the argument here, right? Because this is CRM development and this is user as Postgres. Something like that. Okay. How does this feel? No? We're demoralized. All right, questions or things you want me to go back over with this? Right.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, why did you change it from like the init.py to main, or like
Yeah,
what?
I'm gonna change it back to main to init.py. I just thought it'd be harder to. I might be able to probably directly run init.py, like do Python 3 dunder init.py. I just kind of never do. What you can do. So anyway, we'll change it back in a second.
Okay, and then I feel like I've seen like other code bases that have like I guess like a dunder main.py file, and then like somewhere it'll say like if main.py, then like run. I don't know if you've.
I think that will happen here if yeah, that's a little different.
Okay.
That's something here if dunder name equals I think it's like this.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that, but not, that's a new topic.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's just stare at this for a second. Let's see if there's any questions. Walk yourself through it.
Just real quick. So when you created .env and did it that way, that's two different ways, right? You don't need all of this.
Yeah. So this is a little bit more like configurable, right? Because we can just change. We kind of know that these variables of database, like say I want to change the name of the database to production, great. Just change it right here, right? And it's done. And I don't have to search, like the danger, right? And then I don't have to search through my code base. So that's the idea, is by following this, you don't have to kind of open up the mess of a, like you probably do eventually, but you're saying, okay, this is where the environmental variables, so if you want to change these things, just go here, right? That's why we're like organizing it this way. Right, and that's being read into from the settings.py, right? And now we're back in Python land. So this is just database equals a string, and this is user equals another string, Postgres. and now we pass those values into here, right? We just import those variables and pass them through. And then it initializes the Flask app, sets these key value pairs, right? Sets the values, and then retrieves the database name and the username here.
Could you also just set like environment variables for each database, like test database, dev database?
Yeah, you can do that here. Is that what you're
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So then-
yeah, you can do that, definitely. That works. Yeah. You don't have to change this. Probably you won't have last times you will have just different environmental files. Like you might have like I've seen like it's like .m.local or something. Like so you don't even reference the production database like unless you're using it. Like you don't even have that file there to prevent yourself from messing with production data accidentally. Right? Sometimes you'll do that. Right? Or maybe you just don't want to give all your your developers access to the production database. They don't need it, right? They can just work with test data and you're good. And the developers probably don't want access to it either because if something goes wrong, they don't even want to be, accused. Okay. What else? Okay, so then we can change this to be dunder init. Why? Again, a lot of this stuff is starting to be just conventions. So these are like things that will help navigate a code base. So why does this help navigate a code base? Because I don't know if you remember this, but the init file is the first file, is a file that's automatically run. And maybe we didn't talk about it before, is a file that's automatically run when you import a folder. So for example, let me just show you this. If you, let's say I think I can do this, Python 3, and now I do import source. I can do something like from source, import create app. You see that works because this init file is when you load this package, this source folder, this file, the init file is automatically run and it's kind of available on the folder level, on a package. All right. So you can say, okay, from source import create app, and then you can just say app equals create app and pass through the variables of like the database name is some sample database and have the password or the user be user Postgres. All right. So this is one other thing. So kind of by convention, oftentimes you'll put something like kind of something that's like fundamental or like one of the more important components in the init file. And in this case, that's this create app function. So what does that mean? That means you can do the same thing here. Oh, did it do it for me? From source import create app. I think it did. I think VS Code just automatically updated this for me. So from source, and because init, whatever's in init is available on the package level. All right. So this applies for anything. You can do like foo equals bar, and then whatever's here, you can say from source import, foo, and then print out foo. All right. That doesn't go for any other file, right? If I do like main.py and I do baz equals buzz, and now I say from source import baz. See this? See what this is gray or whatever? It does not see this. In fact, let's try running Python 3 run.py, and it breaks. It did not break with foo because foo is in the init file, but it does break with baz. Cannot import name baz from source because Baz is in this non-special file. Okay. So this is just like the last kind of convention, is generally that this create app function will be defined in the init.py file, right? And then something like run.py or main.py will be importing from source. From source, import this create app function that's defined here, and return the app. Remember, so this is a very common bug, is forgetting to return the app in the create app function. Very common bug. And then calling app.run. And if you forget to, right, let's just see the error. Right, it says none type has no attribute run. Why? Because you're calling create app, that returns nothing, so it's none, and then you're calling app.run, but this is really none.run. So we get the error, none type has no attribute run. So you have to remember to just return it back. Okay. So again, this pattern, you'll see this in this Flask init part right here. So and then there's kind of 2 additional labs. These are the last labs I'll deploy probably till like Sunday or something. So this is, just cleaning up, organizing code lab. It just walks you through, has you kind of figure out some of the details. I think it has some bugs in there on purpose that you try to debug by applying the right conventions. And then this is essentially, all right, start a Flask app from scratch, like employing those conventions. But you can move through this at your own pace. All right. So let's do that. Let's say we'll probably stay here till like Sunday or so. And if you finish this early, you can build like a little Flask API. Like that's what I would recommend doing. Like take your project and turn it into employ a Flask API. All right. Or navigate a Flask code base, like a Flask open source project. See how you do. That'd be nice. Other questions? Anything else to kind of talk about? No. Okay.
Yeah. So, my bad. I know that you said we were a little bit ahead of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I'd imagine that doesn't really apply to the externships, right? Because it's a lot to organize. But